Hello everyone, back again for another video for the Sacred Bleeding series. In this one I'm going to talk a little bit about period poverty statistics and how menstruation can affect all aspects of a girl's life, as well as leading into the child marriage, because some countries see that a child is of marrying age once she begins her cycle. So it all leads up to the education and the poverty. Like, it goes hand in hand. A lot of the places that do not have facilities, healthcare, stuff like that, they don't have education. And education is very important, and it can save young girls from a horrific life. But period poverty affects women, girls, and people who menstruate all over the world. Access to menstrual products, safe, hygiene spaces in which to use them, and the right to manage it without shame or stigma is essential for anyone who has a cycle. But for many, these essentials are just not available, and the denial of these rights is not just a potential health risk, it can also mean girls' education, well-being, and sometimes entire lives are affected. Although the estimates vary, research shows period poverty exists in both richer and poorer countries. Every day, millions are likely to be making decisions about whether to buy food or buy products, while others simply don't have access to the products and facilities that would let them manage their periods with dignity. The World Bank estimates at least 500 million women and girls globally lack access to the facilities they need to manage their periods. Meanwhile, 1.25 billion women and girls have no access to safe private toilet, with 526 million that do not have access to a toilet at all. Research also suggests that the pandemic has worsened the issue. With the lockdowns and stuff that occurred, people's access to menstrual hygiene support in many countries, especially those where such support was already, non-existent, became worse. Meanwhile, border closures and other supply disruptions have limited access to menstrual products themselves, or made them more expensive. And even though we're pretty much out of the pandemic now, we are still seeing the side effects of it. Where menstrual products aren't readily available, many are often forced to use makeshift items to manage their periods. Indeed, in many developing countries, it's estimated that half of all women and girls are sometimes forced to use things like rags, grass, and paper. This isn't merely an inconvenience, it can be dangerous and risk infections. Risks are even greater if the woman or girl has been subjected to the female genitalia mutilation, a practice widely prevalent in many African countries, and I have done a video about that as well. Meanwhile, in many countries like Kenya and Uganda, girls are forced to miss many days of school when they have their period, or even drop out of school altogether. This denies girls the right to their education and often shapes the rest of their lives. A UNESCO report estimates that 1 in 10 girls in sub-Saharan Africa misses school during their period. By some estimates, this amount is as much as 20% of a given school year. Even if these girls stay in education throughout their childhood, they are likely to fall behind the boys of their age, exacerbating existing inequalities. In Kenya, for example, research has suggested 65% of women and girls are unable to afford menstrual products like sanitary pads. This is compounded by the lack of safe private toilets in schools where girls can manage their periods. Just 32% of the rural schools were found to have such facilities. Of course, it is not just schooling that is affected by periods. In some countries, attitudes to periods mean that women and girls are forced to follow certain practices while on their period, which can have serious implications for their health and well-being. Chupati is an ancient tradition practiced in some rural parts of Nepal. It involves banishing people, often young girls, to mud huts or sheds for the duration of their period, or even longer. It is believed they will otherwise bring their family bad luck or ill health. And I mention this again later on. Girls are often left with little or no supplies and no menstrual protections or washing facilities during their time away from home. This can cause a range of health issues along with physical and psychological hardships. Another study conducted in rural western Kenya, where 63% of the population lives on less than $1, found shocking cases of sexual exploitation whereby women and girls were forced to engage in transactional sex in order to receive sanitary pads. The prevalence of this was low, 1.3%, but 10% of 15-year-olds did report this. Girls aged under 15 were significantly more likely to report this kind of transactional sex compared to those aged over 15. In recent years, we've rightly seen in the media a greater focus being put on period poverty as it affects people in richer countries in the global north. The UK is no exception. It is estimated that more than 137,700 girls in the UK missed school last year because they can't afford the sanitary products. 6% of parents said that they had been so desperate to equip their daughters with menstrual products that they have resorted to stealing. More than a fifth of parents said that they had gone without something themselves so that they had enough money to meet their daughters' needs. And as in the case in many countries across the world, period poverty in the UK has also worsened after the pandemic. A recent survey by Plan International UK found more than a third of girls aged 14 to 21 in the UK have struggled to afford or access menstrual products during the pandemic, up to 1/5 of the previous year. This is equivalent to over 1 million girls. Half of these girls said that they did not have enough money to buy period products at all some point over the past year, and 3/4, at 73%, of those had to use toilet paper as an alternative to period products like pads. In the UK, just as in the poorer countries, too many girls are being denied their rights to fulfill their immense potential to flourish and thrive as they grow up. In some parts of the United States, the world's richest country, the picture is even more stark. A study in Missouri found that nearly 2/3, 64%, of women were unable to afford products during the previous year. It found that many women make do with cloth rags, tissues, or toilet paper. Some even use children's diapers or paper towels taken from public bathrooms. Nearly half of the women, at 46%, could not afford to buy both food and period products during the past year. Meanwhile, in New Zealand, a survey found that more than 90,000 school-age girls stay home from school because they can't afford menstrual products, around 1 in 12. 12% of year 9 to 13 students who menstruate said they had difficulty accessing the products that they need. Okay, those statistics are very rough. So, cycles can affect education. Girls may miss school during the cycles due to lack of facilities, necessary supplies, and so on. Health. The use of improvised menstrual hygiene materials can lead to infection. Economics. Women may miss work if they don't have access to the supplies or facilities they need. Dignity. Girls may suffer from discomfort, endure teasing, shaming, and face exclusion from everyday or special activities. Participation. Girls may be distracted or less productive during schoolwork and other activities due to pain, discomfort, leaks, etc. Menstruation is a fact of life for 2 billion women and girls of reproductive age. Yet in many places, girls face serious barriers to managing their periods. Despite the reality that the menstrual cycle is a biological necessity, there are prevalent attitudes in many parts of the world that believe menstruation is dirty and shameful. Much of this stigma is fueled by a lack of education and awareness surrounding menstrual health. One of the most detrimental effects of the stigma associated with menstruation is that many girls miss school due to their periods. Right now, 62 million girls are not in school, and millions are struggling to stay there, with menstruation being one of the many barriers keeping them from exercising their fundamental right to education. The UNESCO report, like I had mentioned, estimates that 1 in 10 girls in sub-Saharan Africa miss school during their cycles. In Afghanistan and Nepal, 3 out of 10 girls miss school for the same reason. Prevalent cultural taboos is number 1 on this list. In rural communities across India, women are not allowed to prepare meals during menstruation because the uncleanliness of their periods is believed to spoil food. In Nepal, the practice of chapati, which has been outlawed now, thank God, as you know, I had mentioned this a little earlier, is still persisting though. It's outlawed, but it's still persisting in many communities. And that is when a girl or a woman is removed from the household and forced to live in isolation during the 4 to 5 days of their period, and sometimes it can be longer than that before they're even allowed to come back into the home. As a result, girls miss school. There are many other similar traditions in rural communities across many developing countries. Cultural and religious taboos surrounding women's menstruation centers mainly on shaming girls and women for something they cannot control. These beliefs keep many girls from the classroom due to the fear of being caught at school while on their periods and subsequently being humiliated or teased. Number 2, lack of menstrual education. Many girls don't understand their periods, when they happen, what they mean, and why. It's no reason for worry. In many instances, a girl's first period, especially if she gets it at school, can bring on an incredible amount of shock, shame, and embarrassment due to the lack of the knowledge of the cycle itself. Girls may not know who to discuss this issue with, especially if healthcare facilities are located far away. Without parents, teachers, or healthcare personnel to talk to, girls often remain clueless on how to effectively manage their periods with proper sanitary products to prevent accidents and ensure safe hygiene. Number 3, decreased awareness among boys and men. Men and boys play a vital role in furthering stigmas associated with menstruation, with girls often reporting being mocked or shamed by boys or male teachers for having their periods in school. One reason for this is that men and boys lack education and awareness about the purpose of the cycles and how ridiculing girls for something natural and biological can decrease their self-esteem. At the household level, where the men are the primary decision makers when it comes to finances, due to lack of awareness of menstrual health, many fathers are unwilling to purchase sanitary pads because they don't understand their purpose, or due to shame and embarrassment, they just refuse to go to the store and buy them. Number 4, limited access to sanitary supplies. With 1.5 billion people living on less than $1.25 a day, the cost of sanitary supplies can be so expensive and not prioritized in many households. Number 5, lack of safe and clean toilets. Even if girls have access to sanitary supplies, finding a clean, safe space to change and dispose of their pads can also be a huge part of their struggle to attend school during their cycle. Many toilets in rural schools around the world lack clean running water and the privacy to ensure that girls aren't vulnerable or publicly shamed if they need to use the washroom. Number 6, it symbolizes that a girl is ready to get married. Every 2 seconds, a girl under 18 years is married. And for many girls, the beginning of their periods mark the end of their education because their parents now believe that they are ready to be married. A recent study has shown that when girls have increased access to menstrual health education, sanitary products, and safe, clean facilities, they are more likely to stay in school and out of marriage. Child marriage is a global issue that disproportionately affects girls. Current estimates reveal approximately 12 million girls are married before the age of 18 every year. This means that nearly every 2 seconds a girl under the age of 18 is married, often with little or no say in the matter. One of the most powerful weapons in the fight to end child marriages is education. In fact, the longer a girl stays in school, the less likely she is to be married early. With education comes empowerment. When girls receive an education, 1, they acquire knowledge and skills that will help them contribute to society. 2, they gain the confidence and respect to make informed decisions about their own lives and speak out about their own rights. 3, their parents, families, and communities see the value of educating their daughters. In Bangladesh, a country with the second highest number of child marriages, it's common for girls, especially from impoverished rural areas, to marry early and leave their families and education behind. Many girls marry between the ages of 13 and 16. Child, early and forced marriage is a global issue. I cannot state that enough. It doesn't just happen in someone else's neighborhood. When a girl is married at an early age, her chances to learn, grow, and realize her full potential are diminished. Child marriage often ensures that girls remain dependent on others, her husband or his family, and removes a girl's decision-making abilities when it comes to intercourse, getting pregnant, and the overall course of their lives. In addition, child marriage increases the risk of violence, illness, and even death for girls. 1. Maternal health. Child marriage encourages sexual activity among girls who are not yet physically or psychologically ready to deal with childbirth. In addition, girls who marry young often live in rural or remote communities with limited access to sexual and reproductive health education, including access to contraceptives or STD testing. According to the World Health Organization, complications in pregnancy and childbirth are the leading causes of death in girls ages 15 to 19 globally. And 90% of adolescent pregnancies in the developing world are to girls already married. Also, girls who give birth before the age of 15 are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth than girls in their 20s. Child brides are also more vulnerable to other pregnancy-related injuries such as obstetric fistula, which can have devastating long-term consequences, especially if left untreated. In fact, 65% of all obstetric fistulas cases occur in girls under 18. Number 2. Infant mortality. Pregnancy at a young age not only has potentially devastating effects for mothers, but also for their newborns. According to Girls Not Brides, which the link is on the community tab, stillbirths and newborn deaths are 50% higher in mothers younger than 20 years old. In low and middle income countries, babies born to mothers under the age of 20 also face higher risks of low birth weight, preterm delivery, and severe neonatal conditions. 3. Domestic violence. When it comes to child marriage, parents often believe they are doing what is best for their daughters by marrying them off early, believing that their new husbands will provide safety and economic security. However, girls who marry before the age of 15 are almost 50% more likely to have experienced physical or sexual violence from the partner than girls who married after 18. In addition, child brides are more likely to describe their first sexual experience as forced. Number 4. HIV/AIDS. Child marriage can increase the risk of girls becoming infected with HIV for a few reasons. Child brides often live in remote regions where access to healthcare and information about sexual health services and rights may be limited. As a result, child brides may not have knowledge of HIV risk factors, prevention, treatment, or even their basic human right to say no to sex with their husbands. Girls are sometimes married off to older men who will have already had and may continue to have numerous partners, which can increase the risk, especially in regions where the virus is more prevalent. In Africa, the connection between HIV and AIDS and child marriage is of particular concern, as AIDS is now the leading cause of death among adolescents aged 10 to 19 on the continent. More than 43 of those infected with HIV, which is 25.2 million, live south of the Sahara. Among the 1.16 million new infections in Africa in 2016, more than 1 in 10 occurred among children aged under 14. In the time it took to get to this part of the video, 60 girls were forced into marriage. That's right, 60 families somewhere in the world made the decision that the time has come for their underage daughter to marry. We can change this if we all work towards educating our daughters and the daughters of the world. Have a good day, everybody. Much love.